Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alexa and Friends. My name is Jeff Blankenburg, and today our guest is Aaron Hsu from Blerp. So, Aaron, welcome.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
It's going good. Obviously, we had a couple of technical difficulties getting started here today, but I think everything is on the level now. I think everything looks good, and we're just going to do our best to ignore the home construction I have happening in my house. So, if you hear any background noises or hammers or drills, just pretend they're not happening because I'm trying my best. So one of the things that I really like to do when we start these interviews is to ask a couple of silly questions. And I know that I haven't prepared you for these at all. So it's nice to get kind of a natural reaction to some of these questions. The first one, there's obviously been a big push lately in the movies to have superheroes, whether that's the Marvel Cinematic Universe or DC, new Batman movies coming out soon. Lots and lots of cool stuff. And my question for people is, if you could pick any singular superpower for yourself, and so to be clear, like Superman has lots of powers, but you just get to pick one. If you could pick one superpower for yourself among all the ones you've ever heard of, or even if you want to make one up on your own, what is the one you would pick?
That's a good question. I usually go with time travel because
Ooh,
right. I think it would be fun, but not in like a sense of just like being able to redo like things you've done, but more of just being able to see like history as it actually happened. And it would be really cool to like see the relations and just how things like go, experience life.
Yeah. Would you have aspirations to try to change time or change events of the history, or is it just more an observation kind of situation?
I don't know. I'm more of the person where like, if you tried to change history, the things that were supposed to happen would still happen, as in we would still make the same mistakes because we didn't really learn from our past.
Yeah.
We continue to do that anyways. So I don't think it would be with the intent of changing anything, but it would be with the intent of being able to be part of it.
Sure. I haven't done a ton of study on the concepts of time travel, and I certainly don't want to make this entire interview about time travel, but this is an interesting topic. And I heard someone pitching recently the idea of time being like a river, a flowing river. And that regardless of what we might be able to do in time travel, the river's still going to go the same way it always did, which is kind of, I think, what you were hinting at. But people always suggest like, oh, I would go back and I would take out Hitler's parents, or something along those lines. And the idea of that theory, the river theory of time travel, is that someone else would have done it, and so the thing still would always have happened exactly the way it did. You would have just murdered two people for no good reason, because the time, all of the events, all of the things are all pre-planned. And that was one that I hadn't heard really. When you think about like the Back to the Future model or some of the others where you can have a dramatic impact on the future. Again, we're talking about theoretical anyway, right? It's not like we can actually time travel, but it's an interesting concept to think about all the different ways that we could time travel.
Yeah, no, that is pretty wild to think about it out like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting theory. Anyway, that's my first question. So you would choose time travel. There's one other question I have to ask with that, because with all superpowers, there's often a very obvious evil way to use some of these superpowers. But outside of observation, how would you try to use that superpower for good?
For good, I mean, if you're talking about being able to teach and share these experiences with people, one thing that I've always been a proponent of, and why I think I love technology so much, is just seeing it actually like influence and change societies. I think one of the most thing that I would really be tying myself to is, how do you accelerate that change? Like, what it would have been cool, if the Industrial Revolution happened, 100 years earlier. Like, if there was a way to accelerate that and bring like all this new technology to humanity like quicker, I think that would have been like really cool.
Yeah. And speaking of technology, that's another interesting thing. If you think about the concept of time travel, if it ever exists, it has always existed, right? Because if someone can time travel, if they invent a machine or a technology that allows that, that means that they can time travel, and we would have seen that happen, which means it would just be an accepted part of society at all times in history. And the fact that we don't see that suggests that maybe time travel is not possible, I suppose. But it's definitely an interesting concept, something I feel like Maybe you and I should do another episode where we just entirely talk about time travel. That might be pretty fun.
Oh yeah, I'd be down.
All right, so we're going to move on to another story, another question now that has nothing to do with time travel, and has everything to do with navigating a large city. So I want you to imagine you're in a large city. Let's say you're on 17th Street, and you know that you're meeting some friends at a restaurant on 18th Street, which is one street over. Now, in big cities, oftentimes you have to walk all the way down and around a large city block. But in this case, as you're walking up the street, you notice that there's a nice, brightly lit, safe-looking alley that cuts directly between 17th and 18th Streets. And you can actually see the restaurant in the distance through that alley. So you decide, rather than walking all the way around, I'm just going to cut through this alley. This will be easy. So you get about halfway down the alley, and you notice at the end that you're heading towards, where the restaurant is, that a giant horse-sized duck appears in front of you. And it's just entered into the alley, and it doesn't look terribly friendly. As you would probably be smart to do, you turn around and decide to head back the other way. A longer walk is better than having to encounter that crazy animal, only to find that that end has been closed by 100 duck-sized horses. So a whole bunch of really small horses on one end and one really large duck on the other end. Now, in either case, you're probably going to have a little bit of a kerfuffle, a little encounter with whatever creatures you decide to head towards. But my question for you is, which end do you choose, and how do you expect to get past the end that you chose?
Oh, the horse-sized duck, and we would wrestle our way through it. We'd go on head on.
Just go hard charging right at it?
Yeah, hard charging. I mean, it's a duck, right? So
Right.
I would think it's softer.
That's true. I mean, they do have some pretty strong wings, and that beak seems pretty fierce, but
Oh yeah, the beak
I think the big duck is probably the right choice, at least for me. But everybody has a different perspective on this. So are you looking to just like duck and duck and dodge and like sneak around this thing, or are you looking
Yeah,
for
exactly. Well, no, I think we'd fight it head on. I don't know how fast these things are at, a horse size, but I would think you duck down, try and like grab it by the neck and then throw it down.
This is such a silly question, and everybody has such a different approach to it. I absolutely love it. And I love that you've got that ferocity to be like, no, of course I can take a horse-sized duck down. Let's do this.
Yeah, I mean the beak part's scary, but yeah, that's what we would try. We'd try to dodge the beak, undercut it, and throw it down.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thank you for entertaining us with some silly questions. I do want to get into some more meaningful stuff now, and this is the part of the interview that's always my favorite, and I think it leads to a lot of other questions as we get into everything. I really, excuse me. I really like to give people an opportunity to understand who you are, where you came from, kind of what your path has looked like. And so, my goodness, what I often ask people to do is to kind of take me on your journey. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Were there any meaningful classes, coursework, internships, jobs, any of that kind of stuff that kind of had a lasting impression on where you've gone in your career so far? And then ultimately will lead us to where you are today, the company you work at, and all that. So I'd love to get there by hearing your entire journey. And you can take as long with this as you'd like, because I think it's always very interesting.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I guess to start off, I grew up here in Salt Lake City, Utah. My parents came here. They're from Hong Kong. And what they did growing up was running a restaurant. And I think a lot of my background was built from them always wanting what's best for me and my siblings here. And them like running the restaurant, putting a lot of hours in. They really didn't like it. They felt like it was just like an ends to a meet. So the idea of just like running your own business and doing that is scary, and it's actually something they discouraged a lot growing up, which is
wow.
So they were always like pushing like education, on me, and I felt like I was a pretty good kid. Like in high school, I would get good grades, like go to school, and when it came time for college, I didn't quite knew what I wanted to do, but I ended up studying game design and computer science, which is really what started out with this bridge of me getting into tech and really seeing this whole world where people are building products and releasing them and, changing the world essentially with new items from it, which was really exciting to me. And I think from a few internships, like I interned at an ed tech company called Instructure. Okay. And the background of that story was that they were started by just a professor and a few like students. And just seeing like when I was at that company, they had already IPO, they're worth like about $1 billion. And I started to see, wow, like this came from just like that background, you know, like people were able to like build something that big within tech from that. And I think that just started like to help me see the spark and what tech could really bring. And when it came to my second to last year at college, that's where the idea of Blerp really came. And that's what I ended up doing later on, is just working on this company full time, which is what we're doing here today.
Very cool. Where did you go to school?
I went to school at the University of Utah.
University of Utah?
Yeah.
Oh, very
So
good.
just
Very
a local
good.
state school here.
Sure.
I think I applied outside, but I always knew I wanted to save money and just go and stay.
Yeah. No, so my daughter is applying to schools right now,
Oh,
and it is remarkable the difference in price just crossing the border. I live in Ohio. And just across the border into Pittsburgh, the price doubles or triples. It's absolutely amazing. So
it is pretty wild. I mean, for the people who I've talked to went there, like it's super worth it to go out of state for some of them. But for me, I think I had the experience I needed, you know, in state. And they always talk about like being a big fish in a little pond versus a little fish in a big pond. I felt like the U was a good mix. It was like I want to say there was 30,000 students there at the time I went.
Yeah, that's a pretty good size school.
Yeah, so it was a pretty good size school, like not too small, not too big, but
Awesome.
definitely helped.
Very cool. Okay, so you started the concept of Blerp while you were in college, and I want to get into Blerp and what it was, but I think I want to start with kind of what was that inspiration. I mean, I would imagine, I think about college kids today, even in the last 5 to 10 years. There's a lot of focus. I look at my son who's 13 even. There's a lot of focus on like watching streamers and playing games and like doing a lot of that stuff. And in the time that I've spent on Blerp, knowing that I was going to chat with you, it seems like there is a lot of foundation in thinking about things like Twitch and streaming and some of that other stuff. So where did the inspiration come from? Where were you when you were like, you know what, I should build a thing that does this? I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. I mean, to give a little bit more background, so like growing up, I was always into content, storytelling. I thought video making was just such a powerful way to just share, your story. And we would make films in high school where we just like share it to like a whole auditorium of kids, and like people like really get the right emotion out of it. And I started to see that power of that. So I guess like extending that to Blerp, second to last year of college, where I was already starting to like see the inklings of what entrepreneurship could really do. That got me like super curious and just like, okay, what was happening in this world? And one of the things that was happening was Shia LaBeouf. That meme was just like blowing up at the time. And for those of you who don't know that meme, it was him just yelling, "Just do it" at the camera. And that soundbite was just shared across everywhere. So that's where when I was just trying to learn computer science, I was like, okay, let's make an app on that. And we built this app where it was just a single soundbite of him playing that button, but it got hundreds of thousands of downloads. And from there,
just to set some expectations, I mean, I have that queued up. Would you like me to play that sound so people know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, sure, play it.
Just do it.
Yeah, that right there. So that right there was like part of the inspiration. And I know he doesn't even know this yet, but like that inspired this company in the way that single soundbite, we saw it, make a lot of people really have this moment we call a Blerp moment, where when you share the soundbite at the right time, then it creates this new experience that people aren't really able to have because sound was just so frustrating to share at the time.
Sure. I mean, it still has its challenges for sure, but
yeah.
So it was honestly, it was based on that one clip from Shia LaBeouf, which is super cool. And then you wanted to have an easy way to like play that and share that with other people. Where does it go from there?
Yeah. So from there, the patterns we started to see, at least around at that time, was like Alexa was just coming out. People were just putting these speakers in our homes, and then AirPods, like more people were just wearing Bluetooth headphones. We were like, oh, this behavior where audio like before wasn't very big, we see that growing, we see like people's psychology almost changing as like we start talking to our devices. And from there we saw, the opportunity that Gifts really built off of phones and text messaging why not do that for this space? You know, why not take all these like sound bites and be able to apply it into like all these platforms? And that's where we started. That's where it was like, hey, let's start building up this database of clips, which it just started out as just a website. Like we threw it up there.
Sure.
And that was exciting a little bit because we got like a bit of traffic to that without really any marketing. And from there, it just like started spiraling. We actually started out as a messaging app, but what we realized was it's these live moments that sound really has a powerful play in. And that's where Twitch really started to come out, where when we integrate into Twitch, that's when our growth just started exploding. And that's where people really started adopting us, using our site, creating sounds, and then sharing it on their streams. And yeah, so it was a mix of like, we saw a little bit of the market, but then also there was like, it took a little bit of a pivot to find where we wanted to place it first before we grow into this bigger thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the weird questions I have, certainly as a streamer myself, and we're doing that right now, but I do a bunch of streaming on Twitch and other services. It seems to me that anyone can create a soundbite here, right? Have you guys run into any weird like legal restrictions about using someone else's sound or just having someone upload something that has a DMCA protection?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten any takedown requests yet, but we definitely run the same thing, you know, Twitch and YouTube. We let the community build their sound bites. And because of that, we risk having copyrighted content on the site. And that's why we have to just work extra careful to make sure that we have the processes to take down that content when it comes up. And yeah, it's been exciting for us where people have reached out more willing to want to work with us because they see the reach of the creators that we can get their sound bites and their content too.
Yeah.
But it is our responsibility to make sure of that. Our end goal is to enable any brand to be able to distribute their content through our platform. And so you can imagine like your sound bites, you'll be able to have a branded account on Blerp and all the sound bites are from you. And because of that, you're able to share them in all our distributions and then one day even be able to monetize it.
Cool. Yeah, I actually just signed up for your, I think it's a preview of your NFT program.
Oh, cool.
This morning. So I'm expecting approval and obviously the whole workup. Right.
Yeah. We'll reach out about it.
Perfect.
Check it out though. That's fun.
It's exciting to see some of the stuff you guys are doing. So that's just my perspective. What is the stuff that you're excited about that you guys are working on?
Let's see. I'm excited about, we're about to launch a desktop app where any person can use our library to plug it into your Zoom calls, your Google Hangouts, your Discord calls. And, you know, that's been a high demand with our gaming community, but it's also been wanted by, you know, teachers who just now in this remote culture, they want to keep their students just engaged in the conversation. So being able to bring in sounds and cultural references into those moments has been important to them. And then even in the workplace, some people like say, hey, how do you get like everyone engaged at stand up or like, you know, lighten the mood up in that way. So really bringing the bridge of our library into these different avenues.
Very cool. This is just a personal question, but I heavily use a Stream Deck device for a lot of my streams, right? To be able to turn lights on and off, like a lot of the crazy stuff here behind me, and, you know, make animations and stuff like that happen. Does your desktop offer any kind of integration with that where I can like kick off a specific sound using the physical buttons of a Stream Deck?
Oh yeah. It's going to do that. We're going to have hotkeys with your keyboard. Nice. So you might not even need the Stream Deck anymore after this app potentially, but that's our goal, is that we see a lot of people paying, you know, tens, if not hundreds or thousands of dollars for like hardware solutions where we're like, there's no reason for people to have that.
Yeah. You know? I do find that it's sometimes handy, especially as I'm typing or doing a bunch of other stuff, to be able to just have a dedicated device with physical buttons. But I'm with you. I think that hotkeys solve a problem for people certainly that don't want to buy a device. But when I've already got a device sitting here that has 32 buttons on it, I want to use them as much as I possibly can. So I think that's it's an interesting concept because I think sound effects go a long way. I also have a soundboard that all of this stuff is running through. And so, you know, I've got dedicated sound effects buttons here. I'll give you a fairy princess sound. But like all of that stuff is integrated in here as well. And it's nice to just have those physical buttons off to the side, ready to go anytime without me having to remember keystrokes or stuff like that. But I love the direction you guys are headed. That sounds super cool.
Yeah, we're definitely excited. We should talk more because I love how you have that, because we definitely there's definitely different integrations to work with or even replace, I think.
Yeah. Well, and for me, the big thing is a lot of my streaming requires me to pull the audio from my machine and push that out through the stream also. And so I actually, the way that my entire rig is set up is I have the audio from my computer and this soundboard all running through as my microphone input. So the microphone comes into the board, my computer comes into the board, and it all goes out as my microphone output, which makes it really, really nice when I want to add sound effects here or use the Stream Deck or even just like show a video. Right now, the audio from my machine is automatically being funneled out as part of the stream, which with a lot of streaming software is not the case. You actually have to go capture that audio as a separate output. So it's just lots and lots of time and convenience solved with hardware and money, but it is an awfully nice thing to have as you play with all these toys.
Yeah.
All right. So I know I mentioned briefly the NFT program, but I know that's something you guys are working on launching here soon. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah. So NFTs, and for those who are just diving into the industry, it's this idea of buying online collectibles, right? You've always seen collectibles as a market outside of digital goods, with like physical people collect, Pokemon cards or any baseball cards. NFTs bring that collectible feel online. Our goal with it is to continue our value proposition of how do we use sound to help streamers build their community, make money, and really support their dreams. And we see NFTs as just a valuable way to help these creators make even more money that they could without a platform like Blerp. And it's the idea that like we already as content creators make so much content, right? We have like hours and hours of video content, but there's no reason why we can't extract extra value in the form of a soundboard or a sound pack, and then share that with our fans in that way. And with Blerp, we plan to use NFTs to help do that.
Cool. So does this become a marketplace? Like I can take a bunch of sound clips from work that I've done, streams I've created, and ultimately just make those available for sale? Is that
exactly? You can sell it. A fan can actually have that ownership over it. Like they can own like your original version of that, and then to take it to the next level, they can share it within all our integrations. So we're plugged into Discord. Your fan could be the one who can share it within your Discord community, and they'll have like the badge like showing it, and it's like super special for them. And the whole monetization is just whatever the creator chooses to do that. But what we've seen with like the whole premium content market is like there's just so much value that creators could really be having by not just building their sonic branding for their voice, but also just using this content in that way.
Very cool. NFTs are interesting. So you mentioned baseball cards. I've gotten way back into my childhood baseball card collection as a result of this pandemic. I had a huge couple of Tupperware tubs down in my basement that had been collecting dust since I was a kid. My wife was like, you really need to go through those or do something with them because they're just taking up all this space. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I started going through them and looking them up on eBay and like figuring out what things were worth. And most of the stuff I had as a kid, they're pretty worthless. But I also started discovering modern baseball cards, and they've done an incredible job with creating scarcity, right? They'll create a card, but then they also create a purple version of it that they only made 250 of, and a blue one that they only made 150 of, and a green one that they only made 99 of. And ultimately, there's also a gold one that they only made one of in the entire world. And it plays along the same concepts of this NFT stuff, where I own a very unique, rare version of this thing. And baseball cards have started moving into this as well. So the publishing company Topps, which makes most of the baseball cards in the world, they started releasing NFTs as well. Same idea, right? Where you own this digital asset, and you are, as part of the blockchain goes, you are the only one that owns that individual asset. It's really interesting to see, and I think a lot of the engine today is on, for better or for worse, it's run on hype. I don't know that a lot of people believe in the long-term value of some of the things that are being sold as NFTs, but I think it's an interesting concept to take what you're describing, right? Taking that tangible physical thing that I could own, possess, hold on to, resell, whatever, and try to translate that same kind of idea to a digital world. And it's a really interesting future that we're headed towards. So I'm curious to see where we end up.
For sure. And I think most people in the community will know that NFTs and their just inherent property today as just a collectible is really hyped up. But the whole idea of NFTs with utility, so being able to use something you own, and that's why people are so excited about the metaverse one day, is that like all these things we own will actually do something for us as we create this digital world. And I think that is how NFTs hit the mainstream market. Is we can.
I saw someone talking about the fact that they were going to sell artwork that they had made, but if you own the top level version of each NFT, right? So let's call it the one of one. There's 100 different one of one items like this, and if you own one of those, in addition to owning that artwork or whatever it happens to be, you also are entitled to 1 hour phone call a year with the creator. Right? And if you pass that along, the new owner then is the one that has access to that kind of thing. Those are the things, those tangible things become really interesting now to me, because if people want access to that person, now those NFTs have a ton of value.
Exactly. I love that use case, because that's exactly the use cases that I see that add value, is that proven ownership only is worth it if you can do something with it, which is why we're excited with a platform like ours. We can really enable people to not just own these sound bites, but use them in a way that we find very meaningful.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, this show is called Alexa and Friends, so we should probably spend a little time talking about voice and Alexa and things like that. So from your perspective, what does the state of voice technology look like today? And I always love to hear from people, like, what do you love? What's amazing? But I also want to dive into like, what's missing? What are the things that you really like? You think it really has this new acceleration once something that doesn't exist today starts to happen?
That's a good question. I love the confidence that's being poured, at least within the community that's driving it. I love how much development has gone through. Like if you think back even 5 years ago where voice was, it's just immensely changed. I think the technology is actually in a better spot than the public perceives as today. And that goes into what I think is missing, is that level of comfort for people to really say, hey, this is a better experience, so let's just go in on it. And I don't know exactly what the solution is besides more and more people just continue to adopt it. But I would say, like, from a public view, like voice is definitely like still like, oh, like what is that? Like, is that like a real thing, you know? And it's it's just interesting that that's where it's at as of today.
Yeah, for me, when I think about voice in the future, and I know I've said this to our audience before, but it feels like voice is just kind of the first step in all of this, because right now it's very, I say something, it tells me something. But I feel like there's an opportunity as we start to talk about the world of ambient computing and the idea that there is processing going on behind the scenes on my behalf without my interaction. I think that's the stuff that gets me the most excited about coming to work every day and thinking about these problems, because I think all of us have our free time. We have our interests, things that we want to take time to do, but all the things in life get in the way, right? I have to pay bills. I have to go have a dentist appointment. I went to the doctor this morning. Like, there's all sorts of stuff. And I don't really want to do any of those things, but I have to because of the way life and society and everything is driven. But I mean, I imagine making dentist appointments or even automating my bill payments. Even if I don't have enough money to cover all my bills, I feel like we could be building machine learning engines and artificial intelligence that really can make better decisions about how to manage my money and how to save and how to do all those things for me. And if I'm not spending time thinking and worrying about all that stuff, that's a whole bunch of time I have freed up to now go do the things that I care about, whether that's inventing, maybe creating some NFTs or building a new application, whatever it is. I mean, that's the stuff that I'm really excited about. Yes, I talk to it, but man, I think it's more that it's doing things for me that right now I have to do manually.
How far do you think, because you're in this like world like I would say like we're adjacent to the world and we see this world that we want to plug into, but you're in this world the whole time. So I'm like super curious with like, how far away are we from this? Like what's the missing piece in technology that's stopping us from like being able to just set up a dentist appointment? You know,
I think, well, so there's two things. I think that there needs to be, and I'm saying this for everybody that's watching too, because we're all going to have to participate. There's going to have to be this democratization of data. I often refer to it as an API revolution. There's lots of APIs out there today, but we haven't even scratched the surface. So one of the key components I think that needs to exist globally is access securely to all the data. Because in order for an assistant to be able to make a dentist appointment for me, not only does it need access to my calendar, it needs access to my dentist's calendar to be able to schedule and do those things. And probably also needs to be able to talk directly with my healthcare provider to make sure that I am supposed to get a dentist appointment at that time. So there's a lot of those kinds of pieces that just don't exist today. Everybody is building castles around their data and doing everything they can to make sure no one can access it in any way. So I believe an API revolution is one big piece of that. I think that's something that has to come. But the other piece is going to be much, much harder than that, unfortunately. And I think that's going to come with the ultimate security, privacy, and trust. Because in order for any of this stuff to work, we as humans have to trust it. And that means it needs to be reliable and secure. And I mean, as a good example, the devices I have here behind me, they have cameras on them. Amazon uses those cameras to help you recognize yourself or to move the device if it needs to, or to create video calls. But Amazon controls all of that because we have built enough trust with our customers that it's okay to do that. Where we haven't gotten yet is developers don't have access to that camera. They don't have the ability to turn on a camera and start recording or viewing what's happening in front of that device. And a lot of that comes down to trust. Do the customers of Echo devices, do they have enough trust in anyone to use that camera? And should they? I always say that we would be living in the farthest, most amazing future if it weren't for bad actors. But because there are bad actors, and I'm sure even with a website like yours, there's been plenty of hack attempts and plenty of ways people are trying to like get in behind the scenes and destroy things or ruin things or just steal stuff. And it's that bad act, that those bad actors are the ones making it hard for us. I remember way back, I was very early in the web development game, mid 90s, and you could just build a website and it was fine. And you didn't now the security protocols you have to go through and the way you have to lock down your data, everything has gotten so much harder and so much bigger as a result of the fact that someone might come after your data. And so I think we need to, as an industry, solve some of those problems effectively. I mean, we still hear every quarter some huge company that everybody trusted got hacked and all the data was released and leaked. That is the thing that is the biggest thing in our way, I think, Aaron.
No, I love that. I think you nailed it with the trust too, just like talking with people and really figuring out what's going to convert that psychology. But yeah, I'm with you. I do see the world though, where I grew up watching like Star Trek and stuff, and you see in the movies how people play out where, they're just able to control everything in the chip with just your voice.
Right.
And if you
from wherever you are,
everyday lives.
Right. I think that's one of my favorite things is they didn't even imagine that you had to be on the bridge to control the ship. You're walking down a hallway, computer, tell me this. You're in the engine room, computer, give me the diagnostics, right? Like it's everywhere you need it to be all the time. That's amazing to me.
Do you see like one company, that computing, like ambient computing, Masterhead, the Jarvis, do you see one company owning that one day, or how do you see that evolving?
I think the only way that it really works is for everybody to work nicely together. And that's actually a good segue because we've helped start something called the Voice Interoperability Initiative. And the idea there really is that there needs to be lots of assistants that do the things that they're good at. And they need to be able to run on individual devices. So imagine, you have an Echo on your counter in your kitchen, but you talk to your car directly, or you talk to your bank directly. Each of them have their own assistants, and you're talking with your bank's assistant, and you're like, actually, what's the weather? Do I want to just walk to the bank today? And it says, actually, I don't know that, but here, I'll hand you off to Alexa and she can give you that information. Or maybe that's just a seamless transition between them. But I think ultimately, I think it's a scary proposition to have one company do all of anything. That's where you end up with things like Skynet and stuff like that. I don't want that. What I do want is the opportunity for everybody to do the thing they're really good at, and then to have all of the software play together, which really comes back to that API revolution, right? I want everybody to be able to interact with everybody's data in a safe, secure way so that we can provide a ton more utility because it's that utility that will drive trust. If you had told people 30 years ago that, oh, you're going to carry a microphone and a camera around in your pocket at all times, it'd have been like, no, I'm not. There's no way I'm going to let the deep state or whatever listen in on all my conversations and do whatever. And it's like, oh, wait, actually, oh, you mean it's going to have Snapchat and Twitter and like all these other games and like all this fun stuff on it too? Oh, that's fine. Microphone and camera away. Utility sometimes gets people over those concerns and those hurdles. And I think that oftentimes when we think about voice and ambient computing, there are still some utility hurdles to get over. People love jokes and weather and recipes and stuff like that, but I think before they're going to start trusting it to pay their bills, they've got to see a ton more utility before they can fully just let that go.
And you think that utility doesn't come unless we have this API revolution?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's hundreds of millions of devices out there. So I think there are a lot of people that are very interested in what is possible. But I think to really get to the true vision of ambient computing, which is that it's everywhere you want it to be at all times on all devices, and you have all these different assistants potentially that talk to one another and coordinate. Yeah, that feels like we've got some steps to go before we can get there. Well, so I've given you my vision of 5 to 10 years. I'd love to hear yours. What's your picture for 5 to 10 years?
5 to 10 years. Well, you're helping me evolve it because I've been trying to like figure out, like, I do see this Jarvis world, right? Like you're able to walk in your house, everything's controlled for you. You don't need like assistant, and that just saves all this amount of time. Like I see us like even be able to not even have to drive, like hopping into his car, it's connected to your car. You're just like, hey, take me to like so-and-so's house. Like I just see this like world, like all the technology's there. We just need to like open up, like what you said, open up that trust to build it. My prediction is that it might be one company like really spearheading a lot of it, but I don't know. I could see a world where everyone's working really well together too. But
yeah, I think I mean, you reference back to the home, right? The Jarvis idea that you just have this person that you talk to and they're there and they can do all the things, right? But as I've had some of these interviews, I've heard some people say some things that are they break my brain a little bit. I was talking with a guy who works for a company called Span, or is a founder of a company called Span. I don't know if you know Span or not, but they make smart fuse boxes for homes. So imagine being able to remotely control every single fuse, every circuit that's in your home. And he had some really interesting ideas about where our homes might even be in 10 or 15 years. And the big one that stood out to me was when he mentioned a world with no light switches in your home. And I thought that was really interesting because what he was suggesting is there will be enough sensors and information that your home can use to determine when lights should be on and when they should be off. You shouldn't need to go turn them on and off. You shouldn't need to tell a device with your voice to turn them on and off. They should just be on when they're supposed to be on and off when they should be off. And that one was a big step initially for me to kind of jump over, like, really? No light switches? But the more I thought about it, he's right. Like, why am I building all of this extra infrastructure into my house, extra wiring, all this other complication, when realistically what we're talking about is just being able to decide when a light should be on and off. It seems like a machine learning model in my house should be able to figure that out probably within a couple of weeks. So I think between sensors and, I mean, we can talk about all the technologies, right? But between sensors and 5G and all the other things that are going to unlock a lot of these capabilities, I am so incredibly excited about where we're headed. And I don't know about you, but like it feels right. It feels like this is the future that I was promised. I mean, I don't have flying cars or jetpacks yet, but I feel like we're on the right path.
I mean, I would be excited about that. My mom used to always get mad at me for not turning the lights off. So if that just solved that problem, I mean, we're in a good spot already.
Right. And so I have 2 kids, and when they were much younger, they'd get up in the middle of the night, get some water, go to the bathroom, whatever, and they would never turn the light off. But the light in their bathroom shines right down the hallway into my bedroom. So I'd roll over and be like, oh, the light's like shining right in my face, and it's annoying. So I got a motion sensor based light switch. This was 10 or 15 years ago. And so once it stops seeing motion, it waits 5 minutes and then it turns itself off. And that was a godsend in my house because I didn't have to I was solving the problem for them without using some technology rather than trying to like train a 4-year-old to turn the light off every time. They just weren't going to remember. So yeah, if at a minimum, for those of you that have kids that are leaving lights on, I see some stuff in the comments, go look up a motion sensor light switch. They're absolutely awesome. All right. So you started your own company. I need to know also, you said your parents ran a restaurant. 1, did they have good food? 2, what kind of food was it?
Did they get it? It was Chinese food.
Chinese food.
And I don't know, they were published in the local newspaper, I think once. So I thought their food was okay, but it was definitely I mean, it's not running anymore, but it was definitely at the time running. I think they had like a little bit high, and then I think more restaurants started coming in, and it started like being even more competitive in that sense. So that's sort of the story with that. But the most of the stories like I remember is just like all of us just like working hard to make it like work. And yeah. I'd say it was pretty good food though. Like I love my mom's cooking, so I would hope that it was like mostly like that, Yeah.
Was it mostly like home recipes, or was it just like, well, we need to serve what people expect for a Chinese restaurant?
It was mostly what you would expect. I would say they were one of the first like Americanized like Chinese food dishes place. So like think of like the average stuff, like American Panda Express stuff you would see at the place.
Got it. Cool. All right. So your parents started a business here. You've started a business here. Do you have any advice for people that are thinking about starting their own business? I'm sure there's many people here just watching that have aspirations or have an idea. I know I certainly have like 10 myself, and I just never pull the trigger. So what kind of advice do you have for people that are thinking about starting their own stuff?
Man, so many. I think one of the ones I always tell people, and I really try and help people see it through just who I am, is that like it really doesn't matter like where you're starting from. Just like go after and start trying to learn and going and putting yourself in there. A lot of the stuff you feel like you don't know comes from either you having to figure it out because that's what it takes to get the business off the ground, or you surround yourself with people who can cover your blind spots. And because of that, the earlier you start, the faster you get the knowledge you want, the faster you get to surround yourself with people who think like you and would like care about what you're doing, and I would, that's the number one advice I always give people is like, just don't focus about how much you don't know, because we all don't know a lot. Just figure out how much you're about to learn and go after it.
That's a really nice perspective on it, is what an incredible opportunity I have to learn things right now. Not, oh my gosh, I don't know anything, I'm going to fail. I think it's hard for people to sometimes pivot around that. But that's a really encouraging bit of advice. I like that a lot. All right, we are almost out of time, but I do have a couple of other questions for you. The first one is, how many voice-enabled devices do you have in your home right now?
I have 3.
3? So let me guess. You've got kitchen, maybe a bedroom, and we're either going like a family room, living room area, or a bathroom. I'm teetering on those 2.
You got that right. It's not the bathroom. I wish I had one for the bathroom. I feel like it'd be nice to play music easily from there. But yeah, it's those 3.
Nice. And so in that list, you're not counting your watch. but that's probably voice enabled.
You know, that's a good point. I am definitely not counting my watch.
Right,
I'm not
what about your
counting my phone. Not
Anything else?
counting.
Anything else we haven't thought of? Does your car have?
No, my car definitely does not have that yet.
Okay.
Just plugging the key and stuff.
That's an easy solve. Does it have Bluetooth?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. So it's surprising to me how many even new cars yet, like when you buy the base model, still don't have Bluetooth. That feels like it should almost be just a law.
Oh, it should be given for sure. You're totally right.
Because otherwise, you know, and you've seen it. You pull up to a red light and somebody's sitting there like this, screaming into their phone because they don't have the Bluetooth hooked up or whatever. I'm not saying we should retrofit all old cars to do it, but I think any new car should certainly have the ability to Bluetooth to a phone so you can make phone calls hands-free and stuff like that. All right. So it has been an absolute pleasure to meet you. I think you are our first guest from Utah, so that's a feather.
Great. Cool.
And where do you see Blerp 5 years from now? What is the big picture? What if you could have all the success in the world? What do you imagine Blerp looks like?
I see Blerp, you know, IPOing as a standalone company, and that we have driven it to not just across streaming, but onto all these other platforms where we see sound really enhancing. And I think at that point, I see a very good business built around creators where we're helping not just tens of thousands of creators, you know, live and make their passion online, but we're helping, you know, hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And
Awesome.
I think at that point, it will be really exciting. And that's where we're trying to aim it towards right now.
Very, very cool. Well, I'm excited for you. I'm going to try and find ways to integrate. And if you'd like to chat, you know, at some time after this, I'd be happy to chat with you.
Cool.
But I'm definitely going to try and find some ways to incorporate Blerp into some of my broadcasts. So I have some extra sound effects and clips that I can just easily tag into what I'm doing.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's talk about it. It'll be fun.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I always learn a ton from every one of the people that I bring on here, and you are no exception at all. So thank you so much, Aaron, for being here today.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in. Thank you guys all for being patient with our late start. But I'm glad we got an opportunity to chat because this has been just fantastic. So thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all again next week, and have an awesome rest of your week. Take care, everybody.